And there we go. I think we are live. I'm sure someone, probably Helter, will let me know if I can be seen and or heard. There, of course, might be a delay because there may be an ad running, even though I constantly get into trouble doing these streams. It's almost like a podcast now, even though I don't do it every day. I probably could do it every day for an hour. Um, just make the arrangements to reach out to people, just talk about average things. I see Stuart, Bams, Helter, and Dragon have already left comments as we wait and see who all comes in. I'm probably just talking to myself, but if anybody, Stuart says the audio and visual are good. So does Helter. I can see and hear you. Excellent. As long as everything is coming through clearly. My microphone here, it looks professional, but it's not. And this was actually sent to my P.O. box by a viewer. Alina is here. Thanks for joining us this afternoon as we muddle through with more bits and pieces from the news. I suppose if anybody watches this after the fact, because it will very likely, hopefully, still be posted on YouTube, and they can see me prattling on before anybody jumps in. There's Holy Bingo. There's John has joined us. It says fellow cat shepherd. Yes, indeed. No cats visible at the moment. They are laying down in various places around the house, but I couldn't tell you where off the top of my head, although one is in a box, apparently. I put a short up of that a minute ago because I thought it was interesting. Bam says we're only constructs of your imagination. Yeah, I forget who that was. It was out of Berkeley many, many years ago. I remember reading about it in philosophy class. He had this interpretation that nothing exists if it's outside of your perception. So if you leave the room and you shut the door and no one's in there, everything in the room's gone. Kind of like the Langoliers from Stephen King. That's probably where he got the idea. I forget who that was. I'm sure somebody could look it up. But anyways, I continue to get into trouble. And this is being broadcast simultaneously on both Coffee Talk and Penny University. I don't know if anyone on Penny University is watching this, because typically they don't, in my experience. But, I'll try it. And see if anybody is there. But just to drive the point home, let's see if I can pull that up here really quickly to show you what I am talking about. How I like to get in trouble. I don't like to get in trouble, but I just do. Let's take a look at this. Come on, do the right thing. There we are. There is my last 7, right? 7, my last 7 live streams. And that yellow mark is a strike. That means naughty, naughty, you got in trouble. Or that's Roscoe used to say that, naughty, naughty, on the Dukes of Hazzard. 7 in a row. And even the short that I did saying, hey, I keep getting strikes on my live streams, got a strike, because why not? That's the way it works. That's the way it works. This is the way the world is. That's how YouTube is. They don't want you to think about anything. They don't mind you looking at cats, though. They don't mind you looking at cats, of which I have many. And again, I'll take a moment to give a shout out before we start looking at the news. I'll take a moment to say thank you to the people who have helped out with the GoFundMe thus far. And I'll go ahead and I'll post that here again. That's our official GoFundMe link to help with the stray animals and the veterinary expenses and the other things that we go through. And that has been Ashley, Bernardo, Richard, Charles, Thomas, Moises, Raccoon, Mike, Thomas, Prime, Jimmy, Tristan, John, Keith and family, Robert, Edwin, Andrew, Cletus, Dino, Karen, Jacques, Visa, Edward, and I probably should throw Keisha in there as well. Keisha has been helping out since long before there was even a GoFundMe link. So much appreciated, everybody. And I guess enough time has elapsed here. We're almost 5 minutes into this, me just droning on, and we can go ahead and take a look at some of the crazy things in the news right now. Robert says, get back in the pen, cattle. Same thing on Facebook. Cannot even post quotes by dictators of the past or their faces. Do you accept mail order? Mail order? What do you mean mail order? Mail order brides? I already have a wife. Or do you mean the P.O. box? Are you referring to the P.O. box? Because people do send also things to the P.O. box to help the channel, or especially to help with the stray animals that my wife and I take care of. And that, of course, is this. I'll post that really quickly. Oh, okay, yeah, to the PO. Certainly, anything you wanted to send to the PO box. People have used Amazon to send cat food, which is great. That I just showed that actually. Somebody sent this from Australia. See, it says Australia on it. They sent a little gift box with little trinkets and stuff in there, and a $5 note. There's a $5 Australian bill in that box, and it's made out of plastic. It's the weirdest thing. It's like a sheet of cellophane. Strangest thing. Cyborg is here. Thanks for joining us, Cyborg. As we're about to jump into the news. We're going to take a look at the news, and some things that I thought was interesting, snippets of the news that isn't, again, a waitress complaining about something written on her receipt, which is 99% of the time a fraud, by the way. Those kind of stories, or, oh, I was subjected to racism because I didn't get pickles on my hamburger. You know, those kind of stories that the news loves flooding you with. There's other things that I think are more interesting. Stuart says UK money is the same. Yeah, we still have the greenback, and that currency, it's not actually paper. It's made out of a material derived from denim, and it's weaved together. It's a really fascinating process to watch. That's why the cash is so durable. I imagine it's got to be more durable than vinyl money. I don't know, as far as holding together, because I've seen bills that, you don't know how they survived, but they're still hanging in there because it's technically cloth. John says, no news anymore, just propaganda. Indeed, you are correct, John. But here's our first offering for today, and it's Katanji Brown. It's Katanji, right? Katanji Brown. I never liked this woman from the start, just saying, because I did not like how she presented herself. Remember, this is the woman who sat there during the trials, if you will, to see whether or not she should be on the Supreme Court, which I don't think she was really qualified for anyway. Just like with the vice president, she was hired because of who she is, not what she brings to the table. Here's a career political person that it checks enough of the boxes. And when she sat there and said, I can't tell you the difference between a man and a woman because I'm not a biologist, makes me sick. And when I heard that, I said, this person is for sale. They're willing to pander and say anything to get this job. They are for sale. How can you make decisions that will affect the entire country and indeed the world by default? Because believe it or not, the United States is still a world superpower. And you're afraid to answer a question. You don't know what a man or a woman is because you're not a biologist. I'm pretty sure it says woman on your birth certificate. I'm pretty sure it says black on your birth certificate too. Did you know you were black without being a biologist? What kind of car did you drive without knowing you're a mechanic? What kind of fruit did you have for lunch without being a farmer? And on and on. When you pick that apart, the logic is sickening. The logic is absolutely sickening. But Katanji Brown Jackson made mathematically absurd claim on black newborns. And I thought this was interesting. This is one of your chief justices here of the Supreme Court. Okay. Because remember, on the Supreme Court, majority rule, 5 people can change the course of not just the entire country, but by default, the world with a decision. And this is one of the people doing it. Supreme Court Justice Katanji Brown Jackson made a mathematically absurd claim about black newborns in her dissenting opinion in the affirmative action decision. We talked about that a couple of streams back. Attorney Ted Frank wrote, blah, blah. We don't care about that. Jackson argued in her dissent that diversity saves lives and that it was essential for marginalized communities. It saves lives for marginalized communities in North Carolina. It is critically important that the UNC and other area institutions produce highly educated professionals of color. Research shows that Black physicians are more likely to accurately assess Black patients' pain tolerance and treat them accordingly, including, for example, prescribing them appropriate amounts of pain medication. Okay, for high-risk Black newborns, having a Black physician more than doubles the likelihood the baby will live and not die. That sounds absurd all by itself, but it gets worse. Frank responded in the argument in his journal opinion piece, a moment's thought should be enough to realize the claim is widely implausible. Imagine if 40% of Black newborns died, thousands of dead infants every week, but even so, that's 60% survival rate, which is mathematically impossible to double, and the actual survival rate is over 99%. And they didn't allude to it directly, but she had said that there's a 40% mortality rate for Black newborns. And it's like a silver coin, 99.9 something for the mortality rate in real life. So what she had to say made no freaking sense. But she's a Supreme Court judge for sale, in my opinion. Dragon says, I always find it interesting how ideology trumps critical thinking for many of these leftists. It doesn't matter what the truth is, only the accepted narrative matters. Indeed. Helter said, we live in a world. I forgot I can do this. I had to throw that up there so people can see what I'm talking about. We live in a world where reality is a challenge, and the way around that challenge is to create a boogeyman. Certain people can just make stuff up, then claim some ism when someone disputes some true. And a lot of politicians do this. Biden does it pretty much every time he opens his mouth. It's incredible, the stuff this guy comes up with. But this makes no sense. This smug woman who is not qualified for the job, in my opinion, and the claims that she's made, it's ridiculous. Frank, a senior attorney at Hamilton Lincoln Law Institute, filed an amicus brief in support of the petitioners. How could Justice Jackson make such an innumerate mistake, he wrote. Frank wrote the Jackson's claim from tongue-tied there. Frank wrote that Jackson's claim came from a 2020 study, according to a footnote in the dissent, but added that the study didn't match Jackson's claim. The study makes no such claims. It examines mortality rates in Florida newborns between 1992 and 2015 and shows a 0.13 to 0.2 improvement in survival rates for Black newborns with Black pediatricians, though no statistically significant improvement for Black obstetricians. And that's an extremely negligible number, 0.13 to 0.2, if the pediatrician is Black instead of some other color. I don't know. I mean, that's not significant. It's not a significant change. That's such a negligible change that in that long of a span of time, from 1992 to 2015, more than 20 years, 23 years, within 23 years, give or take 0 point percentage, 0.13, 0.2. So 0.07% is the variable. But somehow she gets 40% out of that. Zane is here. Hi, everyone. And Zane says, recently became a beekeeper. That's fantastic, actually. And I wish I had the space to do something like that myself where we are now, because it's very rewarding. But be careful. Be careful with them, because they, at first, they can be very susceptible to weather changes until they're well established. Chris says the woke mob are such idiots. They want to ruin healthcare. It's an oxymoron anyways, because it's not healthcare. There is no such thing as health care. Healthcare is a healthy diet, exercise, physical cleanliness, a clean environment, a reduction of stress in your life. That's healthcare. Anything else is health repair. You need pills, health repair. You need surgery, health repair. So the fact that they even call it healthcare is an oxymoron and is misleading in of itself. And yeah, wrap your minds around that. So the system is flawed from the get-go in the first place because it's always been about profit. There's very few people in the medical industry, doctors, pediatricians, specialists, surgeons, nurses, whatever, that truly want to help anybody. They'll tell you, oh, I just want to help people and I want to save lives. But that's a spiel, and we all know it. We all know it. There's very few. And I've worked with a lot of nurses, especially in when I was working in the mental health. Very, very few that really cared about their job. Very few. John says Biden depends order is ready at Walgreens. Yeah, is it? See, health repair. Health repair. And Holy says there's no repercussions for these people who make up false facts. They need to be held accountable, like Bear says to the rock pile. Yeah, but they're not going to be held accountable. They're not going to be held accountable. They're not going to be made to own up to it. And if they are challenged to it, they'll just, it'll be embarrassing for a heartbeat in the news. They'll get their Warhol 15 minutes out of the embarrassment and go on. Zane says the problem with that is some people genuinely believe bullshit. Yeah, they do. A lot of people will believe it. And a lot of people, even more so, people will pretend to believe it if they think they can benefit from it somehow. Cyborg says, I wish I could explain that to doctors. Oh, you're not telling a doctor or a nurse that they don't care. That's not happening. You're not going to tell a doctor or a nurse that they do not care. God forbid you call them out and tell them that they don't care, or that they're wrong, or that they're not doing their job. Remember, a doctor is the only profession by which they insist you refer to them by their title first. Even in the military, you don't necessarily refer to somebody by title. You call them sir or sergeant if they're a working man. You see what I'm saying? You introduce them by something else, but a doctor always wants to be called doctor first. Do you call your plumber Plumber Johnson? Did that ever happen? No. No, they don't. Zane says some doctors truly care. Sure, there are people who care, but there are many who don't, and many more who don't know what they're doing, and that's scary. That is really, really scary. So I'll throw that up there real quick if anybody is interested. If you wanted to find me on Twitter, that is me on Twitter. For those of you who still use that service, it has improved. I've said that before. I didn't use it for years, and then it got a little better. So I'll take it. I will take it. And again, we are broadcasting simultaneously on Prepper University and Coffee Talk. That's why it popped up twice. I got it working. Here as I do this like makeshift podcast, and hopefully I don't get in trouble yet again. I don't get it, because I certainly do get in trouble quite a bit doing this sort of thing. But these are the types of people that we have running the country. These are the types of people that we have in charge. What is this? Zane says, I stopped donating blood when I learned the Red Cross forces people to pay for what I gave out for free. Yeah, and the blood doesn't even get used. Anybody ever work in the medical unit on base overseas? Can you explain what they do with the blood when it comes in from the Red Cross? When they drop the cases off, it'll sit out there until it bursts and bakes in the sun, because nobody's going to touch that blood. If a soldier needs blood, they put a call out, hey, general call, we need O negative, whatever. Soldiers will line up around the block to donate blood, fresh blood from Brothers in Arms. They don't want that God knows what blood that had the plasma drained out of it and sold, that the Red Cross is trying to pan off on everybody. Unless it's a foreigner, then they might use it. You didn't hear that from me. Frank says, of course, doctors care, but only about their tee-off time. Okay. And D-Loaf made it. Yes, you did make it, D-Lo. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We were just talking about Katanji Brown. and how she takes an obscure study that demonstrates that between black and white pediatricians in a 23-year-long study from 1995 to 2003, it shows a difference of 0.07% improvement in infant mortality, which is already better than 99.99% anyways in black women. That when she quoted it, she said 40% mortality and has been called out on it by the press and has not responded and probably is not going to. Bams said, I would be really scared about blood injections these days. I don't blame you. And they might put, other stuff in those transfusions and you don't know. Yeah, Peter, if you can find any, maybe you know somebody that can help you out. Holy says, any doctor that pushed the shot knowing the facts behind it only care about their wallets. Yeah, and that's most of them. Most of them got behind that. Delo says, amazing information. You mean about the blood? Yeah. It's scary. They won't use that stuff. Those soldiers won't touch it, or the doctors won't touch it. They don't trust it. It ends up in the burn pile if it doesn't just blow up because it's been bloating in the sun for a week. And speaking of battlefields, here's the next one. You saw this coming. And this is San Diego Union Tribune. It doesn't matter what paper because you can find the same garbage on any of your news outlets. And it says the U.S. will provide cluster munitions to Ukraine as part of a new military aid package. Another military aid package. Thanks, United States. President Joe Biden, no kidding, administration has decided to provide cluster munitions to Ukraine and is expected to announce on Friday that the Pentagon will send thousands of them as part of a new military aid package worth up to $800 million for the war effort against Russia, according to people familiar with the decision. Another $800 million of your tax money going to the Ukraine. And again, I will remind you that despite the narrative, and I am not permitted to speak against that war openly by Google, who will shut down everything right down to my emails. They put out a warning about that last year, to a blanket warning to all of the YouTube and other users. You have to go with the press narrative or you're going to get in trouble. It says the decision comes despite widespread concerns that the bombs have a track record of causing civilian casualties and sparked a call from the United Nations to both Russia and Ukraine to avoid using them. The Pentagon says it will provide munitions that have a reduced dud rate, meaning fewer unexploded rounds that can result in unintended civilian deaths. Aw, that's nice. Chris says U.S. economy is going to collapse. People are asking questions here. Oh, I'm going to catch up a little bit on some of what you guys are saying. Chris wants to know what kind of scenario is most likely. I'm waiting for grids to shut down. I'm waiting for power grids to fail, actually. But you can't predict it. It could be anything because we already went through a scenario with the whole C virus pandemic that they set up for us, that they used against us to hem us up, and showed our government how easily they can get the majority of people to comply. So it's tough to just sit down and predict and nail anything specific, but they've been playing with that for a while here. There's been a lot of scenarios where there have been like transformer stations attacked, blown up or shot up, and people have been out of power for days and weird things going on, brownouts all over the place. We haven't had brownouts since the freaking 80s in this country. Now we're getting brownouts. So I don't know. Peter says we had a big case here in New Zealand about baby needing blood transfusion. Yeah, Chris, read that for yourself, guys, because I probably can't say it. And they now have that suppressant medication that's made from blood plasma, I believe, by the way. So when you donate plasma, know where it's going. It's not going to necessarily life-saving medication like you think. They told us when I did it that it was going to burn victims, but a lot of it ends up going to cosmetics and to stuff like this, that HIV suppressant medication that hides it from detection. But does that mean you can't transmit it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It says, Chris says American taxpayers are funding Ukrainian crime mafia. Probably. Well, I mean, I can't get too mad at Ukraine, Chris, because if a big government's going to offer them free money, they're going to take it. Doesn't matter what country it is or what their reason is for it. Odds are they're going to take it because those governments have no integrity. It's not the people, it's the government. Zane says, I've been seeing a lot of nuclear war ads in media, in Ukraine media, I bet, or PSAs rather. Chris thinks the economy is going to collapse. Stuart says, weren't cluster munitions banned by international convention? I don't remember, but you could be right. Peter says they have already lost the war in Ukraine. Yeah, they're hanging by a thread. Alina says, get in line, comrade. Dragon says the drip, drip, drip of weaponry is just painful and it's just prolonging the war and the suffering of millions of innocent Ukrainians. And there's JK, and this says it's been said the guns used in France came from Ukraine, the gifts that keep on giving. And we just keep going here. I'm way behind. Peter says another pandemic. They're already setting up the WHO. Yeah, if he signs that up, I'm going to be pissed because you should never give power from your country away to an outside foreign entity, the UN included. And Zane says Russia's collapsing, China's economies are crashing. Well, China's in a huge real estate bubble. Look that up, China real estate bubble. They built entire cities. They got ahead of themselves. They thought they were going to manufacture the whole damn planet. And they've got cities that can house millions of people that are completely uninhabited, that are smack new. So they're suffering a great deal in that respect. They hurt themselves. They shot themselves in the foot by building all of those structures, and nobody's using them. Frankie says, with all the push to electrification and no support to the power grid, yeah, it's coming. And Bam says, of course, when the plan is to escalate and send NATO troops officially, they're already there. There's already unofficially, and it's off the record. I'll say it's rumored. Let's put it that way. That there's already boots on the ground, already U.S. boots on the ground, and we'll leave it there because I don't want I get in enough trouble. But the thing is, this is what the U.S. does now. Have we legitimately walked into a war since the Spanish-American War, which was started by Teddy Roosevelt, by the way, on purpose? Teddy Roosevelt set that up and left the Navy Department into the Army, formed the Rough Riders completely as a political decision. I know I'm going on left field a little bit here, but follow me. Because it was a cavalry, but he was the only one with a damn horse. Because when he went to Cuba, he filled up the whole boat with camera equipment so that they could play newsreel shorts of him leading the charge on silent films, because that was a popular thing, those newsreels. When you went to the movies, you were there all day. You watch a couple of films, watch a bunch of newsreels, a couple of cartoons, whatever, because he wanted to make a bid for president. Ended up as vice president, which he didn't want, and even said that vice president is a loser job. Paraphrasing a little bit, but you get the idea. And ironically enough, that within 2 weeks, the president was assassinated after winning the election. And Teddy Roosevelt ended up being president. Funny how that worked out. But they at least with the Spanish-American War, we went ahead and started it. World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, name it. We got sucked in. But we got sucked in because we were sending supplies and finances and whatever, trainers, whatever garbage, long before we got troops pulled in and officially we're on war status, because that's the way the US does things now. And I keep waiting for it. How long before we're officially sending troops? At least when Reagan screwed around with Afghanistan, he was smart enough to keep the military the hell out of it and bury it. Cruising says the brownouts are extra annoying because even back to GW and Obama, they were talking about the need to upgrade our transmission lines. If I remember right, something like 18% of production is lost. Yeah, it's pretty bad, and it's getting worse. Oh, I'm way behind. Sorry, guys. I'm not trying to ignore anybody. Helter says cluster munition interdiction makes only sense when you fight against an enemy nation on foreign ground. And who is this? Stever says hello from east of New Orleans. Nolans. Great channel. Thank you, Stever, and thanks for joining us today. Dilo says, I enjoy listening to you while I'm driving my truck. You driving a rig, Dilo? And that's what you want. If you want to stay awake, you listen to someone talking when you're driving. You don't listen to music. Music will put you to sleep. Zane says, let's send those homeless to China and occupy those cities. That's a good idea. You could send them to the line in Saudi Arabia. They're going to need what, 1.5 million people to fill that place up? Send them all the homeless. They won't want to do it because they'll have to work. Chris says China controlling Africa, Cuba, South America. And then Peter says with the WHO pandemic treaty, they don't have to sign up for it. They have to opt out of it. Otherwise, it's binding. And Zane says African countries are so unstable. China's just wasting its time. They've been unstable long before the white man ever set foot in those countries. But, back to what's going on with Ukraine and people wondering, how can we keep sending money there? How can we keep doing this? Well, again, it's not the American people. Are you watching from Ukraine or anywhere else in the world? It's not us. We don't want any part of it. We've been through far too much of it. We were done after World War I. Trust me. We're not the ones making these decisions. But it's really easy for politicians to make decisions with your money, tax dollars, and your lives, because they're not going to pay for it. And they're not going to go and fight it. That won't happen. There's no King Richard the Lionhearted in the United States, senator, president, whoever, that's going to lead the charge over there. That will never happen. They're going to sit safe at home, sipping their martinis, and laughing all the way to the bank while we're being bled dry of our tax money. And we're losing sons and daughters, husbands, wives. You get the idea. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it'll always be. It's horrible. Stewart says Britain has admitted Royal Marines are operating inside the Ukraine. That wouldn't surprise me. And Chris says the Chinese supplying Mexico cartel with fentanyl. Hey, money is money, I guess. The Great Britain did it forever with poppy seeds. They were the biggest drug cartel in human history. And Zane says it's funny seeing as many African countries now hate China. Well, they don't like the imposition. They don't like when another country tells them what to do inside their border, which is why they don't like the U.S. putting sanctions on them for their decisions about, say, gay rights, for example. That came up just recently. Was that Uganda? I want to say Uganda. And they're like, don't tell us what to do in our country. Mess up your own country. Yeah, I agree. Regardless of whether what they're doing is right or wrong, that's their bag. That's not our problem. We have enough problems here that are not being dealt with without worrying about what the hell's going on in an African country. And Holy said, I'm pretty sure the cluster bombs were banned. However, like the thermite bombs, Russia and U.S. did not sign the ban on those. It doesn't matter if something's banned. They'll use it if they want to. Yeah, just run through a couple of these. Oh, there's Prime Mover. They're all sleeping, Prime. I called you out earlier. I ran down the list of people that helped out with the GoFundMe. Always appreciated. Taking care of all the stray animals, cats and dogs. And again, mostly cats, if I'm being honest. I rarely get a dog. Unfortunately, dogs don't make it when they get dumped out here. I'll run that over real quick. Cats are easier because if you dump a cat, it's going to run off somewhere. It'll run and hide in the woods. If you dump a dog, the dog's too smart for its own good. It'll run back and forth on the street where it was left looking for its ride. Sooner or later, somebody's going to hit it. Yeah, I often find them dead on the side of the road. Sometimes I find them alive, and usually they end up with the mother-in-law because it's just easier because there's a lot of cats here and you don't know how they're going to act. Zane has a difference of opinion about who's giving fentanyl. Yeah, but Raimundus, if I pronounce that correctly, they build towns for future use, but if there's no one there to maintain them, they fall apart, which is what's happening. The structures are starting to crack, they're collapsing. There's no one maintaining those cities, so they're suffering. It's a huge money pit. Peter says, yeah, banned but Ukraine and USA are not on a signatory on the international group banning them. Yeah, that's some of that discussion's been popping around here. And Chris says Democrats and many Republicans are warmongers. Trump's the only recent president not to start a war, which there is some truth to that. Yeah, and Zane says China's towns have started to decay. That's what I was saying. I'm a little bit behind on the comments. I'm not trying to ignore anybody, but I'll have to skip ahead here because it's getting crazy. And preparedness veteran says, hi, folks, dropping in to see what's happening. Thanks for joining us. We were just running over Ukraine, getting another $800 million from the United States, another $800 million of your tax dollars at work, because it's easy to spend someone else's money. And that's what our government does. That's what any government does. It spends your money with no oversight, no transparency, no cooperation. Because if you could control how your tax money was spent, it probably wouldn't get spent at all. Prime says when we send food, money or food to Africa, we bankrupt their farmers. They can't compete with free. Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, and D-Lo is in an 18-wheeler. Yeah, then you definitely want to hear talk radio while you're riding. You know, my wife used to drive a rig. She used to drive for Werner. Not the best company. And she had she used to offload too. She didn't have no touch. You have to be a truck driver to know what I'm talking about there. Uganda and Kenya. Thank you, Chris. Uganda was in my head. That's me. I clicked my own thing. Lots of conversation here going. Situation with Ethiopia and the dams they're building in the Upper Nile is interesting. And Stacy says the comments are showing. Yeah, comments should be showing from both channels, because I'm simultaneously broadcasting on Coffee Talk and Penny University just because I can. But again, yeah, it's easy to spend someone else's money, and it's easy to waste someone else's time and lives. It's easy to waste their lives too. It's easy to send men and women to war, mostly men, because you know how that is. I don't care how inclusive the military pretends to be. They primarily are going to use males. All right. The rest of it is a game. And if you've been in a deployment area, you know what I'm talking about. What is this? Yeah, Cruising says, no touch, you unhitch the trailer and leave. There you go, Cruising. Otherwise, you have to unload as you go, sometimes multiple stops. Yeah, she had the Dollar General run with those rolltainers, and that was a nightmare because you when you open up the truck, no matter how well, it's either strapped in so much you have to cut the straps to get the damn things off, or it's come apart and it's all over the truck. And then the rolltainers you pick back up from the Dollar Generals, they fill them with garbage, and there's water and fluid leaking out of them and all kinds of trash and wet cardboard. It's disgusting. Yeah, super easy when it's not your money, says Zane. Absolutely. And again, when it's not your lives, when it's young American lives or people that are early on, you know, they're late teens, early 20s, maybe even in their 30s, and you're sending them to go kill and die in a foreign country. And then if they make it back, you give them a hard time about their disability. You got to fight with a VA agent, a VA rep. And it's tough to find a good VA rep. Most of them are just shining in a seat with their ass in an office because they know they got a cush job. Although there are a handful, there's a couple that they love the challenge. And those are rare. Those are hard to find. That would be great, Zane. We need more transparent tax use, such as annual receipt for the government needs to post for spending down to the penny on a public forum. That's how it should be, because people should have a say in how their money is spent. And they tell you that you have your say basically in how you vote, and that person is voting to represent you. But we all know they don't vote to represent you. And if they do pretend to be representing anyone, it's a hand-picked group of fringe minority people that they'll put in the background when they do their press shots and say, oh, see, I'm helping the people. And that whoever this group is represents like 0.003% of the population. And we're all supposed to believe that you're on board with it. No. You even look at the C virus package, tax packages that they gifted to the American people, and how much of that money that didn't go into a check to each person, but went to projects overseas and went to other things that you would not want that money to go to. I don't think money should be going overseas, period. You know what I mean? Yeah, Alina. He's right, but yeah, will it happen? Not bloody likely. And Chris says Democrats love to post pics with minority groups or kids. That happened to my kid. One of my kids got sucked in with the governor of Kansas. And they were on a field trip we're taking a field trip. And the field trip turns out to be to the Capitol building, which is no big deal because it's sitting right in downtown Topeka. And everybody sees the Capitol building. And they go to the Capitol building. Oh, the governor's available. We're going to meet the governor. Okay. And then suddenly they end up in a photo behind the governor. And he's sitting there smiling, looking like he's signing something. And then they usher them all out of the room. And they use opportunities like that. I think half the time, these kids had no idea they were going to see the governor, had no idea they were going to have their photo taken. What was that picture used for? So he could pretend like he was doing something at the time. And this was more than 10 years ago, by the way, but you get the point. Yeah. Aid leverage, says preparedness veteran. Indeed. Too long, Chris. Probably, I know it was more than 10 years that I lived in Kansas. Now the next one. Thank you, D'Lo. D'Lo wants thumbs up. And as I always say, I know that they tell you that it helps with the algorithm. I don't believe that at all. I don't think anything can help my algorithm, as much trouble as I get into. But I appreciate it. So thank you. Doc is here. Hi, Dave. Just tuned in. We were just talking about the Ukraine. Moving on to another issue here. Another interesting snippet from the news that I've run across. And this is more insanity. This will get me in trouble for sure. Just let that sink in for a moment. Chris lives in southeast Nebraska. Omaha's gotten really big in the last couple of decades. That's a on and poppin' town now. And I've been to Omaha a couple of times. And Alina says, last time I was in Kansas, a house fell on my sister. Oh, Lord, what part of Kansas was she in when that happened? But you see here, and this one is from Fox. And again, it doesn't matter. You can find it on whatever news service you want. Wow, Paul McCartney looking like a grandmother right there. And still going to concerts. but he's not. I've talked about this on the Coffee Talk a few times. He's not hitting those notes. Women's Health CEO pushes gender inclusive pads for everyone who menstruates. August CEO Nadia Okamoto claims she's proud to have gender inclusive pads in this age of, I won't read that, but you know what it is. I'm not going to read it, and I'm not scared of tea people. I'm not scared of them, and they always make it sound like you are. They make it sound like you are, and that's why they say phobia all the time, because it implies fear. It says Zane says if we spend less on our defense budget, we can implement an affordable healthcare system. And again, it's not healthcare; it's health repair. It's health repair. Healthcare is an oxymoron when it comes from that system. But I don't mind a big defense budget. If you're a big country, you kind of need it because everybody hates you. But we don't need to fund everybody else's military. See what I'm saying? Or a lot of other projects that money's going out all over the world for that we need to mind our business on. I think we may waste more money on public school than we do on the defense budget. Preparedness says, yeah, those older singers just don't know when to stop. They're terrible. I got in a lot of trouble for talking about Pat Benatar because Pat Benatar can't do the notes either. She uses she keeps another singer backstage who sings at the same time she does. And when she goes for the high notes, the technician turns both dials, just as a rough explanation, so that you hear the background singer hitting the note instead of her, because she can't do it. A ghost singer, if you will, which means she's not really giving you her all, is she? Or Kiss, for example, that not only is lip syncing the concerts because they can't sing at all, but not even actually apparently playing the instruments. The music's being piped in from somewhere, and the instruments are not actually connected. So you're watching a mime act, essentially. It's ridiculous. Robert says, news today was how if you changed over, how easy it is to change back. Let that sink in. Not talking about an oil change. And you can't. What's done is done. It can't be repaired. It can't be fixed. You will never be the same after that surgery. And if you revert back, because you can't fix the damage that's been done. They take things away that cannot be replaced, male or female. It's really sad. It's really sad. It's really sickening what they're doing to these poor kids. Prime says, been a while since I bled out of my... Yeah, no kidding. You can't. Pete says the last mass shooter was you know what, but they're covering it up. Yeah, and there's a huge mental health issue in that community too. And Alina says, I have a fear of snakes. That's a phobia, not some guy in a skirt. Exactly. And Chris says, keep men out of women's bathrooms. I don't blame you. Prime says, Dave doesn't read my jokes. I have to be careful with some of them, Prime. You know that. I get in a lot of trouble on this channel. Helter says her company will end up like Bud Light. Zane says that. I got to be careful what I read. Doc says we should have stopped being the world's police force long ago. And again, I mentioned it earlier. That's actually Theodore Roosevelt who started that. Theodore Roosevelt's the one that started the United States with getting into everybody's, every country's business. He thought that if you're a superpower, you should be on everybody. I'll just run through a few of these comments so you can at least see them as we continue on here, because I will read a little bit of this. She probably doesn't. Some of these health CEOs are scary of the way that they look and the way that they are. It says, during the latest episode of CBS Mornings, wow, what an exciting show. I don't think I've ever seen that, and I don't think I ever will. The network show brought on the founder of a feminine products brand named August that prides itself on producing, yeah, I love how they throw that in there right there, on producing menstruation pads for menstruators of all genders. If you're pretending to be female, can't you just use maxi pads anyways if you're pretending to have a menstrual cycle? I'm just saying. But cute marketing. That's clever. During the segment, August CEO Nadia Okamoto talked about the importance of coming up with new absorbent and environmentally sustainable pads that are also period positive and gender inclusive, designed for everyone who menstruates. Okamoto added the part of the inspiration for her new August pads was that we live in an age of you know what, because I cannot read that. And what I will tell you though, on what I can tell you on that is that there's no actual menstruation. However, there is seepage because essentially you're maintaining an open wound. Look this up. I'm not making it up. I challenge anybody. You don't have to take my word for anything that I say. You got the internet right there. It's for more than Angry Birds and pornography. It was intended to make knowledge and information available to the whole world. And it's all celebrity gossip and porn and propaganda and garbage, unfortunately. But when you transition to a female surgically, you have essentially an open wound that has to be maintained open. There is a plug that you're supposed to use when you sleep to keep it stretched open, or else it will seal. It is a wound that probably will never heal, that will seep and will get infected. But they're not going to call it that, and they're not going to tell you that. They're not going to call it that, and they're not going to tell you that. Robert says, look at the billions going to the DHS for what? Policing American citizens. They even have a department to go after illegal merchandise. No need to be in a cave. Just sell pirated NFL jerseys. No kidding. You're getting a lot of trouble for that kind of stuff. Prime says, once you get the hot pocket surgery, there's no turning back. Yeah, don't read this. No kidding. I can't read the whole thing, but I know what you're talking about. And Zane says some big box honey suppliers have been caught cutting honey with high fructose corn syrup. That's terrible. That's terrible. That's why you should buy local honey. Chris says biological males can't menstruate. Yeah, they can't, but they can have a seepage that you can pretend that it is, but it's a consistent one if it's happening and it's prone to infections. Stewart says, be careful about a nationalized health system. The NHS has grown out of all control and is dragging the UK government into massive debt. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. If people think they want national health, and look at Great Britain, look at Australia, look at Canada. Ask anybody who lives in those countries how great that works. And they will tell you it is miserable. It's a miserable, frightening almost experience to have to go to the hospital in those countries because of the way it's run. It's run into the damn ground, and they're taxed to death for it. So they are paying for it through taxes as opposed to having insurance. Chris says, a young man at my high school cut off his you know what, and as a result, his father died within a year from the shock. Really? I wonder if that's true. I'd be upset because I don't think these young people have any clue what they're doing, and they're being misled and they're being lied to. They're being lied to. Chris says, don't buy garlic from China. It's prepared by prisoners. And socialized healthcare doesn't work. Canada sucks. Are you in Canada, Chris? I can't remember. Yeah, socialized healthcare works when you die. That pretty much sums that up. That pretty much sums it up. And Doc, if you want to know what socialized healthcare is, go visit the Veterans Administration. Well, the Veterans Administration overdoes everything. They make things hard on themselves by overdoing it because they only need to do half of what they do. My wife gets appointments made for her by the VA constantly. If it was up to them, she'd be in there every like 3 weeks. It's ridiculous, and it's for nothing. It's stuff that she doesn't need to go in for, stuff she doesn't need to do, and they run themselves over with unnecessary work, unnecessary treatments, unnecessary everything. And it's like, stop, let people come in for a regular checkup. Let people come in for what they need to come in for instead of making appointments and dragging all these vets down there constantly. And then you're overloaded. And then there's a political environment in there that's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. So they get doctors in and they get other staff in, and then they want to leave and they end up quitting because they don't like the way things are run. They don't like the way things are run there. Something's really wrong with the culture in a lot of those hospitals. But they could ease things up just by if they stopped like forcing appointments. And a lot of the other sneaky things that they do, like she got them to stop wanting to take a blood test because every time she went in, they wanted to send her to the phlebotomist. And she finally called it out. And she said to the phlebotomist, you don't need to check this and that levels. I forget what it was specifically. She was like, you're not checking for this and that, or high blood pressure or cholesterol or whatever. You're just trying to see if I'm a drug addict or an alcoholic or something. And he was like, well, yeah, they do that. And has not gotten a blood test since. Because she figured it out, they struck her. JK says, I feel bad. People are making themselves reliant on high amounts of medical procedures for their whole lives. What happens if it stops? Cold turkey can be dangerous for a lot of people. And I worry about people that are on a lot of meds. Yeah, but who's going to initiate it, Zane? Healthcare reform? We do. We need public education reform. We need a lot of reforms. But who can you trust the people that would do it? That's the problem. That's always the problem, is the people who step up to do it are no better than the ones that you're replacing. Chris says Canada's encouraging assisted suicide instead of giving people assistance. Yeah, I've heard that. And socialized healthcare is funded by working taxpayers. It's not free. True, Chris. That's the problem. Zane says doctors have 80% accuracy when diagnosing. I don't know, but I wouldn't trust any statistic, and I bet it's less than that. Zane, we're going to be doing that soon. You're already doing conference calls for diagnosis over the computer anyways. But can you trust the AI? You expect the AI to be honest? It's only going to be as honest as whoever programmed it, right? Doc says, last time I was at the VA, it took 4 hours to get my blood drawn. I'm not surprised. And preparedness says, too many people are living unhealthy lives in an era where most health systems are a critical mass. The road to disaster is assured. And that's the argument. Healthy diet, healthy exercise, clean body, clean environment, a reduction of stress. That's healthcare. Everything else is health repair. Surgeries, health repair. Medications are health repair. Constant doctor's visits are health repair, and so on. And that's why I say that healthcare is an oxymoron. And Cruising says, random side note, I found a fencing wholesaler 30 miles away, save 200 versus Home Depot. You may have luck if you do the same with your project. Doing all the labor they say Americans won't do themselves. There you go. Hey, you save a lot with labor. I've done most of the work in my house. The flooring and a lot. Oh, I hear thunder. I hope I don't get thrown off. I've gotten thrown off live streams during thunderstorms before. Yeah, trust is always the key issue. Preparedness. But yeah, I'm glad you found a deal. And I always do the work myself if I can. I completely remodeled our bathrooms, installed new fixtures and everything myself. If I can do it myself, I'll do it because I know it's cheaper than having to hire somebody for it. Helter says, is there free will in the world, or is everything we do automatically move because it's predetermined? So we're living in a simulation. I don't think everything's predetermined that minutely. And Ahu says, not everyone can be a lawyer. AI will allow you to remove anyone for any reason. And population will decrease with AI. It's already, it's increasing. I don't know, because we have more and more people all the time, but in certain areas it is decreasing. But you often find the areas of decrease where you have the most decadent societies. because they become more selfish. Yeah, Googling your symptoms. I'm sure they do. Because it's not like, especially if you go to the pharmacist. Remember when the pharmacist used to be an old guy and he'd cut the pills and mix it himself, and you could have a conversation with him and he knew what he was doing. The pharmacists don't know what they're doing anymore. Yeah, trial and error medicine. It's scary. Get rid of politicians, Frankie says. Yeah, good luck. Chris became a small-scale chicken farmer to have a job that's less likely to be replaced by a computer. That's good. We want to have some chickens too. We're trying to see if we can arrange that, but then we have to be careful with all of the strays that come around here. We got a lot of hawks and owls in the area too. Oh, and Holy's got to go. Thanks for joining us, Holy. And there's Nature Nerd. The reason why U.S. healthcare costs so much is because giving free healthcare to non-citizens with then overcharging U.S. residents to pay for the government healthcare that is losing money. That's part of the problem. And Stewart says all preppers should befriend vegans during the apocalypse. So it'll be the only source of clean meat. Oh, you think? Shame on you. Cannibalism is a sin. Zane says, I see a lot of good deals that are just scams. That's true on sites like Temu. And also be really, really careful with Craigslist. Craigslist has just turned into a disaster. Yeah, third world country population's going up. What else are they going to do? That was the thing. I remember thinking about that years ago. They're over there trying to get people in all these third world countries to abstain from sex and to use birth control and all this other stuff. And I'm like, you're taking away the one pleasure they got left. You think they're going to do it? No. And Nature says also insurance jacks up the price of healthcare. Yeah. And Prime says to deny determinism is to deny the law of physics. And this last one, it's not a major story, but it's just really weird. And I wanted to share this one here. Hold on to your hats. I'll let that sink in for a moment. Doc says, get livestock guardians for your chickens. I have two. They kill anything that tries to get near the coop. I'm not so much worried about the hawks and the owls because we got a lot of coverage, but I am worried about how the cats will interact with them. But yeah, we thought about doing that. You know, even just a couple, like 2 or 3 hens just for the eggs. You know, that's something we'd like to do. We also like to do a beehive. I'm not sure if I have enough clearance from the next neighbor for something like that because I don't want to piss the neighbors off if there's suddenly bees everywhere. Unfortunately, cruising. Yeah. Unfortunately, cruising. That is some crazy stuff right there. And this is the CDC we're talking about. Fails to mention possible risks aside from the fact that it's just really stupid anyways, because you're not designed for that. It says CDC encouraging biological males to chest feed newborns and guidance for transitioning individuals, but some doctors are criticizing the agency for failing to mention possible risks posed to infants. T and non-gendered individuals, we'll just call it that because I don't want to get in trouble. I'm probably already in trouble for again, the last 7 live streams I've done on Coffee Talk, I've gotten a strike for. 7. And this is probably going to be 8. May give birth and breastfeed or feed at the chest. The CDC announced on its official website, the CDC further claimed that an individual can successfully chest feed without having given birth to the baby. In each case, the CDC encourages T individuals wishing to chest feed their infant. See, it says chest feed. To speak with the healthcare providers familiar with medical, emotional, and social aspects of gender T's to provide optimal family-centered care and meet the nutritional needs of the infant. Why? Because nothing's going to come out. Because if you're a female that went to male, you no longer have mammary glands because they would have been surgically removed. And if you're a male going to female, you never had any to begin with. And anything that does come out, because I know you can trick the body, a male body can be tricked into producing a fluid. It's not milk. You know what I mean? Oh, man. Yeah, Cruising says CDC encourages women to use formula instead. Yeah, and formula, I don't know if it's still on there, but I remember reading cans of formula and having it say on the can that it's not a good substitute for breast milk. And next time I'm in a market, I'm going to look and read and see it, because it isn't. It's made out of soy and corn syrup. It's garbage, and there's nothing has ever been made that can replace proper breast milk. Nothing. It's frightening. But yeah, they want you to use formula. They want you to use formula. Why? Because it's full of estrogen and corn syrup, make your kid fat and soft. Zane says bees could be in the suburbs. I know beekeepers in San Francisco that have balcony. Oh, okay. Because that's something we'd like to try, actually. Something else we'd like to try is we do more so the homestead thing on our property. We got our fruit trees going, and we got our little raised gardens going. And although my lime tree died, I had a lime tree and it died because of the constant cold, hot flashes. And I thought I lost my orange tree. That thing died all the way down to the root. All the way down, it was nothing. And I went ahead and clipped it, and it started resprouting. The orange tree is back. Accredited medical. Who accredited them? Stever says chickens are therapeutic. Just watching them free range is good for your soul. Stacy wants to know what I think of Bill Gates. I don't trust Bill Gates. Bill Gates is somebody who got too big for his britches. He thinks that because he has money, he can decide what everybody does. He can make decisions for the whole world. And it's amazing that some of these people, they get so big that they think that you should do everything they tell you to do, and you should believe everything they tell you to do. Who are you to decide for the entire world what needs to be done? I don't trust him any more than I trust any of these other people. Preparedness says a lot of banks are closing people's accounts down in the UK for their views on various issues. Coming soon to your bank, folks. Wow, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. And that's part of the danger also of cryptocurrencies replacing cash. But yeah, I mean, they've been doing that anyways. A lot of banks have, they'll distance themselves from certain people for outspoken views. And they have no right. They have no right, and they shouldn't have any right to do that to people. And that's unfortunate. They shouldn't have the right to do that to people. And I would love to see all of these companies, whatever they do, whether it's retail, whether it's banking, manufacturing, whatever, just do your job and stop with all the social stuff. I don't care about your social viewpoints or your political viewpoints, and stop pushing them on people to check boxes. It's frustrating, and people lose respect for them. I mean, look what's happened to Bud Light. Look what's happened to Target, because people are fed up with it. Look what's happened to Major League Baseball and the NFL, and all the highs and lows they've had recently. Helter says the CDC needs to reconsider anyone involved in their public statement, because the last several years have been blunder after blunder, and every time it erodes confidence. Yeah, but they've got enough power and enough financial backing to keep going. And Zane says the Spartan myth of the creation of breasts said men had them first. I don't think so. Yeah, living in end times. First human who ever had breasts was a man. Sure. I don't believe that. Prime says, just say the T men have. Yeah, okay. There you go. You almost had me going again. And Dragon says it's insane the CDC can't just come out and say T people should not breastfeed. No, they're afraid to because they don't want any backlash from anywhere they might get funding from. Robert says, look at China. A few years ago, 2 Chinese men killed a few American babies by poison. The CCP took care of the men on the floor of the company with lead, as an example. They execute people quick in China. They don't waste a lot of time. Robert says Gerber was the name of the food. And okay, as I run through a few of these, Chris says Bill Gates wants you to eat a peel and bugs while he buys up the farmland for carbon credits. He won't be eating them. And I'll tell you also, those crickets, those industrial farm crickets that they grow for the purpose of human consumption, they have parasites. It's not like, because actually it's kosher. Crickets and grasshoppers are kosher if you had to eat them, biblically speaking. That's in the wild. The ones that are farmed have microscopic parasites that could cause a lot of serious illnesses with human beings. Let me throw that out there for you. That's the direction they're bringing us in. A lot of people are considering crypto. It's not going anywhere. When they started taxing crypto, that's when you knew that that's the direction that we're going in. But they're trying to force it so that that's all we have is the crypto, because it's easier to shut it off. It's easier to block us or control how it's spent. And Preparedness Veteran says it's got to go. Thanks for joining us, Preparedness. I probably need to get going myself here in a moment. And again, we'll thank everybody who has joined us today. And thank you, everybody who, let me throw that back up there again, everybody who helped out with the GoFundMe for the stray animals that my wife and I take care of. And I gave them all a shout out earlier. I really appreciate the assistance to everybody who has chosen to participate with that. It's still up and running because people have it was encouraged for me to put that up by viewers, and many people have contributed to that, and it means a lot. So we really appreciate it. But I'll go ahead and sign off. Hopefully I didn't get in too much trouble today, and we will try to do this again soon. I typically do this on Coffee Talk, but I can cross over onto Penny if you guys would also like me, or Penny, Prepper University. It used to be called Penny University, but people didn't know what I was talking about. I can continue to cross over on both channels if you'd like to see that. So let me know if you would like to see that, guys. Okay. Yeah, and that's part of the problem, Brimmick. God knows what they're feeding them. God knows what they're feeding them. That's why farmed fish isn't as good as wild caught, because the farmed fish eat corn, nothing else. But anyways, thanks for joining us, and we'll try to do this again sometime soon.